Starting this week, the summer lineup has kicked off with Suicide Squad, and there are going to be a lot of anime rolling out right behind it. Before we get swept up with all the new anime, we must first talk about our spring episode highlights. As my second installment, we are once again pointing out the best episodes that contributed to the spring season. Before I get on with the picks, please note two things. One, these are all subjective, and you are more than welcome to disagree. Secondly, these picks are gonna come down to what I watched, so if I happen to skip over something that you feel really deserves that hype, please don't take it personally. Spoiler alert, but I can already tell you now, a certain comedy show and a show from Toei Animation is not in this video, just to set expectations. Now, without further ado, here are my choices for the best episodes for Spring of Anime 2024. Given the rising disappointment from the reception of the Tokyo Revengers anime, Windbreaker ended up being the success that the delinquent genre needed. A much more simpler approach with these students turned neighborhood protectors, and at the helm of the story lies our main character Sakura aiming to one day lead this noble group. Of course, to climb the hierarchy, one must obtain merit, respect, recognition, and most importantly, a purpose for said fights. Thankfully, conflict tends to be the best teacher. Furin High vs Shishitorin brought out 5 matchups, each putting their respective best up to the task, and as you can imagine, among all of them, the MC's fight was the best one out of the batch from the presentation to the narrative impact. Episode 8, titled Succeeding the Past, put Sakura and Togame in a brawl, all for the sake of having that conversation foreshadowed by Umemiya. There are times where conflict is inevitable, and sometimes understanding the reason why somebody has to fight can lead to some very emotional backstory into a character, that of which we saw when it came to Togame and the path that led to the current Shishitorin. The entire fight, especially once both heads became clear, was one of the best hand-to-hand exchanges so far this year. I don't think I can really exaggerate more than that, as the Windbreaker staff put in some serious effort into this episode, from the choreography to overall consistency throughout this entire conflict, and by all means deserves some serious praise for how much elevation it has compared to the source material. Windbreaker may not end up being some complicated story, but it doesn't need to be, and in fact accomplishes what it sets out to do with all the context we are given within season 1. We've got territories, we've got competent fighters, and throughout the rest of the series I expect to see a lot more of these types of engagements, knowing the bar established thus far is quite high. Back when I made my spring watchlist video, I mentioned that Kaiju No. 8 was probably going to slam it out of the park come its adaptation, and boy was I more than right. Upon the initial batch of announcements, the reception of the series had one main complaint, and that being the character designs. However, what mattered most is the action of the series. It's the whole bread and butter, and by the time we concluded the recent conflict, I'm pretty much confident in saying that the complaints are pretty much gone. This entire season has managed to live up and even surpass the source material in many areas, delivering on the greatness that contributes to the overall meaning of kaiju slang. No longer are we in the era of Pacific Rim type combat, but instead taking a stab of using our enemies to our advantage, leading to combat that can't help but make you think of Attack on Titan. Episode 10, titled Secret Revealed, was a desperate showcase of survival by the Defense Force to make it out of this raid brought on by Kaiju No. 10. Throughout this entire battle lies chaos everywhere, and some of the best action brought out by Shinomiya and Hoshina throughout, and in the final home stretch we have a team effort with Captain Ashiro at the center, even going as far as to giving Hoshina a Levi pilled sequence to bring this dude down, and when you think it cannot get any better than this, trust me, it did. Kafka's transformation is the one thing you have to wonder just how long could he have kept it hidden. In a last ditch do or die effort from Kaiju No. 10, that secret had no choice but to make its way to the surface in order to save everyone's lives in the most textbook badass moment of a sacrifice an MC could have. The Defense Force has been highlighted to be a selfless job, one that will put your life on the line for not only the people of Japan but for your comrades as well, both of which resonated with Kafka deeply, especially when recognizing that this is a place where despite him belonging is going to be somewhere that he'd have to work twice as hard in. The conclusion of episode 10 took off literally literally, with Kafka pushing the kaiju amalgamation bomb far out as possible, and as you can see, it looked incredible. VA performance echoed within the kaiju-like roar managed to sell the moment, and what lied after was the result of his actions. Despite his efforts, Kafka is one of the first people who can willingly transform into a kaiju, and as such, makes him an unknown variable that must be contained, and painful as it may be, by the very childhood friend herself. In my opinion, it is at this point that the story of Kaiju number 8 really begins. With secrets no longer withheld and a new position determined for Kafka's use, what lies ahead for the story is nothing short of hype when it comes to the battle against kaiju. Choosing a winner for Jellyfish Can't Swim was not an easy thing to do. Throughout the entire anime, there were many episodes that captured the personal level of emotion when it comes to passion and vulnerability. Pursuing your passion while on the outside may seem like a fun thing to do can lead to internalizing a lot of negative and ugly emotions, some of which I think all of those who create some form of content or art come to experience at some point throughout their journey. If there is one character that truly stood out towards the end of the anime's run, it's Kiwi and her arc coming to a critical point in episode 11's What I Love. As we get older, we are programmed to believe that the simple pleasures that we love are supposed to be things that we fall out of love with. It's because we are getting older and becoming much more mature that we are to naturally grow out of these simple pleasures, but in reality, it doesn't work like that as much as people may think. Throughout the show, we came to see that Kiwi was a girl who, despite her surroundings, was prideful in the things she loved. Yet her environment wasn't fond of that expression, and what came from that was seclusion. Anxiety, the fear of going to school, delicate situations at hand that can come from such immense judgment and criticism of one's surroundings. Her character spoke to me in a way where it felt very real, being that I know there are people out there who are critically judged for the things that they like. Her VTuber persona was a way for her to be herself without the world knowing who her truly is, and as the show progressed, it eventually became compromised to the point that the IRL worries began to catch up to her once again. Episode 11 served as a point of confrontation for all of which has haunted her throughout her life. Standing 10 toes down in front of those who judged her harshly and speaking from the heart with everything that she had. It may have come off a little cringe to some, but being honest about what you like and how much you like it is a lost art. A lot of people are afraid to do so, others are afraid of the criticism that may ensue, and it's why we as people form small communities of like-minded people in order to create a sense of safety. At some point, even walking on eggshells becomes an unreasonable way to live, and sometimes standing on business is the best way to get people to finally cease in their own aggression. You never know what somebody is going through or have dealt with, and in this case, getting it all out was long overdue for Kiwi. The way this show continued to speak to its audience is something I will be sure to remember, and this episode for sure can be thought of to embrace what the true meaning of passion is about and confront those who dare have the audacity to judge it. Surprising as this may be coming from me, I really gotta give it to this half of Mushoku Tensei. No weird or criminal writing decisions, Rudy's life had gotten back on track, he married Sylphie, and just overall great writing moments for his character. Between him learning to become a better brother with a very emotional episode with Norn and reflecting on his previous life, this season has had a lot of good developments going on. However, what is a Mushoku Tensei season if not for a turning point episode leading into some of the best content this series has to offer? Starting with Turning Point 3, out of all of them, this one has to be my favorite one yet. Unlike the other two turning points that were primarily action based on different scales, this turning point served as a challenge that invaded on a much more personal level involving family. With it being a central theme of development this season, presented Rudius with a choice in the middle of him becoming a parent himself. To either go aid his father and save his family at the cost of missing his child's birth or to stay back and let things play out in an unknowing fate. Writing choices like this can be summed up to a damn if you do, damn if you don't, in which ultimately Rudius decides to go. While his intentions were in good faith, nothing would have prepared him to witness one of the most traumatic parts of this new life. Episode 22, titled Parents, brought out the best action episode for the entire anime adaptation thus far. A true party-style boss fight against a Hydra and a race to save his mother. The tension in this episode, accompanied by multiple talented animators to deliver a heavy action-filled episode, made the build-up to this section worthwhile. One wrong move could spell defeat, and it took precise teamwork to pull off this fight. However, not all the time is execution perfect, with Rudy creating a vital opening that the Hydra did not miss. Ever since Turning Point, you could sense the red flags coming for Paul, and unfortunately, his end finally arrived. It was already enough that this episode dropped on Father's Day, and what we left with was a new father no longer with his own. You truly could not help but feel bad for what had transpired, but this is what it means to adventure out in this world. Not every isekai will be sweet, and despite getting a second chance, reality will still provide some of the most heart-wrenching moments, leaving Rudy having to once more push past the pain as he ventures back home with a fragile victory in hand. The Todoroki family plotline has been said to be the best plotline within MHA, and after years of build-up from Season 2's kickoff to the iconic Dabi's dance, has finally brought us to this moment. If you were going to be seated this far for anything, it was definitely going to be this. My Hero Academia Season 7 Episode 8, titled 2 Flashfires, was everything you'd expect it to be just knowing who we are dealing with. At last, we finally gained answers as to what happened to Dabi in the events that truly created him beyond the events at Sokoto Peak. His anger, his very existence, held together by the flames of resentment and lived on till this very moment, only to be met with the opposite. Shoto's journey within MHA started out in anger, and upon his saving back in Season 2, began his path to one day stop his brother. Through shocking revelations and determination to stand among his class, he finally reached his own peak, in which would lead to a new power built solely to stop his brother. As a certain man said long ago, we aren't watching MHA for the fights, but when these characters do fight, it tends to be some of the highest emotional peaks a shonen series can offer. Dabi vs Shoto was a clash of two victims born from the sins of endeavor, and in this fight, MHA did everything it does best. Emotional OSTs, stunning artwork, and moments that would leave you silent from what transpired in front of you. This is a fight you could be hyped for, but you cannot help feel sad for knowing why there is conflict in the first place. The conversations around this plotline has always been tough and full of nuance, as abuse and the trauma that can come from it is a very serious topic in which Horikoshi has delicately dove into. What lies beyond the flames are two boys each having to face the result of their family's actions, and it is here that Shoto is finally able to force a crossing path with his brother. With the series officially wrapping up in 5 chapters as well, you can't help but cherish this emotional ride nearing the climax, as the first flame of battle has been put out and we're only just getting started. With that, ladies and gentlemen, is going to bring me to the end of my picks. If you made it this far, thanks for watching, and let me know what your favorite episodes were from the spring season in the comment section down below. As always, be safe out there, and I'll catch you all in the next video.